Hello, everyone. This is Mike from Dimensional Walking. And today we're going to do part two of Aliens, Eisenhower, and the Military Industrial Complex. Okay, in part one, which I will put a link in the description, you'll need to go back and it's not long, so you go back and listen to that because that sets it up a little bit as far as Eisenhower meeting with aliens, possible meeting, of course. We don't 100% know for sure at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. So I'd like you to listen to that. And this is kind of the finishing. This will talk about his speech, his farewell speech, and some of the things in this farewell speech that I believe signifies that he had possibly a meeting. Now he didn't come out and say it in so many words. You got to read a little bit between the lines, and also conclusions that I made on also on the military-industrial complex that he does more specifically talk about in that farewell speech. So I think the farewell speech, which was done in 1961, that would have probably been January because he would be leaving office, so that would have been his farewell speech. I think it's one of the best speeches I had ever heard, and I do listen to quite a few of the president's speeches since 1961. Although in 1961 I was a pretty small kid, but I don't even honestly I didn't remember listening to the speech in '61, but I did, obviously I've heard of it since, and being an older person now. So, anyways, so let's go, and I'm going to kind of read through some of his speech, and I'll try to make a comment or two as I go through it. But listen carefully. I think there's some pretty profound things in there that he talks about, and I think we should all pay particular attention, not only on the alien existence, but also the military-industrial complex. And you have to remember, when I say the military-industrial complex, again, I think, I've done a lot of research, and I've done a lot of on aliens and alien abductions, and I think like I said in part one, I think President Eisenhower is a pretty great president. I admired him very much in later years when I started to kind of look at history and presidents. And then, of course, the military-industrial complex, as I said in part one, that I had worked for at various aerospace companies in a logistical role, and also in other roles that I can't mention at this point. So, anyways, so let's start with this speech. I'm not going to read it all. It's quite lengthy, but I'm going to take out the pieces that make sense for what we're trying to discuss here. So, here we go. My fellow Americans, 3 days from now, after a half a century in service to our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of the office as in traditional and solemn ceremony. The authority of the presidency is invested in my successor. Progress towards these noble goals is persistently threatened by conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very being. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Now, I think at this point, he is talking about aliens. I really, really do. I don't think he's talking about, Russians or other countries like that. This seems pretty big, bigger than that, okay? Unhappily, the danger promises to be infinitely, for an infinite duration, okay? So what he's saying here, whatever this threat is, alien or not, it's going to go on for quite a while. And I would think that it would probably be something like aliens, because I don't think they would be anything that could be solved very quickly. I think more likely the Russians or somebody else can be solved at a much smaller time frame, okay? To meet it successfully, this challenge, this danger, I guess we'll say, there is called for not so much the emotional and transitory sacrifices of crisis, but rather those which enable us to carry forward steady, surely, and without complaint the burdens of a prolonged and complex struggle. Okay? Now, you could argue, yeah, he may be talking about Russia, a long-term, prolonged, complex struggle. But boy, I tell you, I guess maybe I've been in the business too long, but it sounds maybe like something very different, very powerful struggle. And then he goes on to say, with liberty at stake. Only thus shall we remain, despite every provocation, on our charted course towards permanent peace and human betterment. The record of the many decades stands as proof to our people and our governments have in the main understood these truths and have responded well to them in the face of stress and threat. But threats in a new or but threats in kind or degree constantly arise. I will mention only two. Okay, so here's kind of the two of them that he talks about. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Okay? A military organization bears little relationship to that known by any other predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by fighting men in World War II or Korea. Okay, so now he's saying that we're starting to develop this very powerful military industrial complex. Okay? It was so much different than we had in World War II and Korea. In those cases, we just kind of had a small standing army, and we ramped it up, and we went to war. Okay? Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. America's marker of plowshares could, with time as required, make the swords as well. But now we can no longer risk emergency provisions of the national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry, the military-industrial complex, okay, of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in defense establishment. Again, remember, this is 1961, and it's much bigger now. We annually spend on the military more than the net income of all United States corporations. It's much greater now. Okay? In proportion. I guess I should say in proportion. This conjunction of immense military establishment and large arms industry is a new to the American experience. So he's saying that it's really started developing right around the late 50s and early 60s, okay? The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. So what he's saying is a military-industrial complex. It's got its fingers, its hands in every pie in the nation, okay? I don't even think people talk this way nowadays, and I think it's a lot worse now than it was in the past when Eisenhower was around. We recognize the imperative need for this development. Yet, we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and likelihood are all involved, so it is the very structure of our society. Okay, so he's saying it's become part of our structure now, or it's becoming that, and he foresees that, or possibly somebody told him that's what's going to happen in the future. Okay. In the councils of the government, we must guard against acquisition of unwarranted influence whenever sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex. Now, I believe that was him saying military-industrial complex. I believe that was the first time it has ever been said in that way. Okay? So he's raising the flag. He's raising the warning flag of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. The potential for disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. So again, he's saying disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. And basically that's what's happened. And that was 1961. Okay? We must never let the weight of the combinations endanger our liberties or our democratic processes. Okay? So he's saying don't let it take you over, okay? We should take nothing for granted. Only an alarm and acknowledgeable citizenship can compel the proper meshing of huge industry and military machineries of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty can prosper together. So he's pleading out there, citizen of America, be aware. But he does say we probably need it, but we probably need to make sure we kind of control it so it doesn't control us. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by the federal employment, project allocations, and power of money is ever present. Okay? He's saying the government is giving a lot of organizations, military type organizations, industrial complex type even universities. And this power of money is something that people are going to be looking for. Those entities will be looking for. And is gravely to be regarded. And he said gravely to be regarded. Yet, in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, and we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of the scientific, technological industry. So he's got military industrial complex, and he talks about this scientific technology basically elite. And these are maybe the universities and the military and the industry kind of combined together. Okay? It is our task of statesmanship to mold, to balance, and integrate these and other forces, new and old, within the principles of our democratic system, ever aiming towards the supreme goals of our free society. Okay? So that's what he said that relates. Now, there was other things in the speech that were very good, but this is really what I want to say. So I believe that he was talking about an enemy to some extent that was above any past or present, what I would call normal enemies. Okay? He's talking about something greater than. Okay? He's not only talking about those enemies, but he's also, I believe, talking about, of course, quite straightforwardly, the military-industrial complex, the danger of that. I believe he's also acknowledging, between the lines, that aliens are out there. And that's one of my connections I make with the Holloman meeting he had with aliens, which I believe to be true. Okay. So the question would be was Eisenhower influenced by his meeting with the aliens? And again, we don't quite know what aliens these were. Were these kind of reptilians? Were they grays? Were they Palladians? There's so many different types out there. And were they good? Were they bad? Etc. But it seems like they possibly, my speculation is they were probably telling or warning Eisenhower of the military-industrial complex, even though I think he had a pretty good idea of the danger. I really believe they probably warned him. Maybe they would have abilities to see in the future. I don't know. I don't really know. Because you got to remember, the military-industrial complex has to constantly feed itself with wars. Because it's an industry that's trying to grow, it's trying to stay alive. There's a lot of people involved with it. And if we don't have kind of wars and disasters, it is not going to survive. So it's always out there looking for stuff, okay? And I don't doubt someday, and it could be very soon, we do have this war in Ukraine. Of course, that's a lot of the military-industrial complex is a big part of that, supplying weapons to Ukraine. But when that's over, which who knows when it'll be, but let's hope it's soon, they're going to be looking for something else. And I don't doubt that this could be maybe even a false flag alien type thing, where all of a sudden, or they, lately, as I've written, they seem to be bigger interests. They seem to want to tell the public, maybe there's a threat out there. Maybe we should be aware of it. And this would be just ideal setup for them to create a false flag or something, which all of a sudden now we got to spend billions and billions of dollars building some big defensive thing to keep our humanity alive and not being destroyed by the aliens. So I think it's possible that they could have maybe warned Eisenhower. Now, we got to remember, again, we don't know what their agenda exactly is. They did do it because he just wanted to be good aliens and said, hey, be careful, the military-industrial complex could do this, that, and the other. Or were they making sure maybe the military-industrial complex doesn't get too big and powerful and maybe challenge them someday? Who knows? We'll never quite know that because Eisenhower has died, and I don't think he's left too much behind to clarify that. Anyways, that's it. Hopefully you thought it was interesting. And if you want to comment, please comment here. Or you can send us a private email at dimensionalwalking@gmail.com. If you like us. We need your subscriptions. And that's about it. As Roy Rogers always said, happy trails until we meet again. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.